cheese in it.
It's a bread sandwich.
What's a bread sandwich?
As far as the public outreach, we wanted to discuss all about the engineering plan.
See the guys that park their campers out on Home Avenue at the park.
Yeah.
They met two of these
officers. Well, see, I saw that vehicle there when I came down the street earlier.
I'm assuming you're not contagious.
It looked like the guy had got out and walked his dog. He was walking his dog or something. I go, why are you walking your dog? And then when I drove by up there, there's a hose coming off that RV going into the park.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
And it's like,
April.
so I saw the one there and the other one was just pulled up as I went by. All right, this is what I like to see.
Less warm.
Less warm.
Could it be less warm?
Okay.
The clouds.
Or he might be at City Hall looking for us.
Same with
Employed people that are on the list today. All that stuff.
So.
We'll give them a call when I get back home.
No, I mean.
Supposed to be last year's report, it's not this year's. They haven't done this year's yet. Great. Although, I'd argue with him
Waiting
about
for
the
the
bowling
cable to go
stuff down.
across and plug into the
He
electric
kept talking about it. He talked about it on the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
I kept saying, well, then there's something. Well, probably, Minnie's probably already did that.
Yeah.
Right, until, you know, was like the time for us to leave. Ran back in that room and.
But not, not here. So where, you were down in Southern California?
He left all those places.
Oh. There you go.
Like their special days and nobody else is playing with them.
Yeah, right.
That cool today. Hung out at the museum for a while without even trying to warm up.
I know, you think, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That's for you.
Do you want our neighborhood association on the tag or just our names?
It might be helpful to have a neighborhood out there.
No.
We have speakers.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, if you want to
We
put
just behave ourselves.
your neighbor association on your name tag, it might be helpful to folks who don't know you.
They don't know me by
You
now.
were brave enough to sit beside me. That's awesome.
If they don't know me,
I'd be happy to tell them who I am.
You like that?
I was at the
Where you're from?
seeing my board meeting yesterday.
You don't know who you are?
You're not gonna put, and they were, I saw the deal.
No, there you go, that's it.
Volunteer
very
of the
cool.
year.
You're very good. I like that.
Volunteer of the year. I looked at it and go, you can't. Why not? I've already been volunteer of the year.
The best
Think you get
sign.
No one ever has.
there's nothing in the, yeah,
That begins with the Western.
No one's tried it.
Where are you from?
But, well, I just know this guy who's my favorite.
Stefan. Where are you
So we
from?
went around the room with the three members.
Where are you from?
Which one of us?
I'm
No,
there's
it
nothing in
has
the
this.
original rule
Yeah.
said,
All right.
and
Yeah?
the reason it's been up twice is that there was, when it started out, there was, you could look and say there was a good number of people who were It's equally, yeah.
All equal in
Oh, I suppose I should put it up.
You could, which is usually the case.
And Ed only got it the first
I
time
think we're
because
gonna get started, because I know we have a lot to talk about, and I wanna make sure we're done at 8 o'clock, so that I can illustrate the right way to end a meeting on time. The things that we always talk about, I don't wanna like break my own, my own rules. So the microphones on the tables, use them as much as you can. We're actually gonna be filming the meeting so that folks who couldn't make it are able to watch it. It's not a PA, so when you talk into the microphone, you're not gonna hear yourself. It's just being recorded. I know they wanted to be very clear about that, but, feel free to get up and as we're talking, grab a sandwich, make sure we take care of those before we leave. Bathroom's right out the door here, for anyone that hasn't been here before. You walk right by it on the way in. And I think what we'll just start out is just a really quick introduction of everybody. We'll just go around the room and just say your name, the neighborhood association you represent, and then your position on the neighborhood association. I'm Jason Wax, City of Milwaukee Community Engagement Coordinator. I guess we'll just go this way since
I'm Kelly Bruggs, I'm the Assistant City Manager.
Steve Adams, city engineer.
Dave Ashenbrenner, Chair of the Hector Campbell Neighborhood.
Dave Hedges, Vice Chair, Hector Campbell.
Milo Denham, Chair, ISMDA.
Pam Denham, Chair of Land Use for ISNDA.
Charles Bird, Vice Chair, Island Station Neighborhood District Association.
Susanna Pai, Lake Road Neighborhood Association, Treasurer.
Jan Cartmill, Linwood Neighborhood Association Treasurer.
April Gratz, Island Station Treasurer.
Matt Rinker, Chair, Ardenwell, Johnson Creek.
Lisa Gagnon-Rinker, Land Use Chair, Ardenwald, Johnson Creek.
Lisa Lashbrook, Secretary, sort of the Llewellyn Neighborhood Association.
Sort of. Stefan Lashbrook, Llewellyn Neighborhood Association.
Kathy Heisey, I live in the Island Station neighborhood, but I am also a city councilor.
Thank you. I think we're gonna have probably about 3 or 4 people joining us, so as they come in, if we're in the middle of talking, just, maybe make them feel comfortable. We might have to squeeze in a little bit if 3 or 4 more people come, so help me with that as much as we can. Appreciate it. I'm just gonna go over the agenda real quick. We're gonna talk tonight about, Steve Adams is here to tell us a little bit about some capital development projects around the city, especially east of Highway 224. We're gonna, Kelly Brooks, our Assistant City Manager, is gonna talk a bit about our updates on our community engagement efforts in relation to the City Council goal of engagement. Neighborhood boundary adjustments, we're gonna chat a little bit about some requests that we've been talking about for a while related to some NDAs that would like to make some changes to the boundaries. We're gonna talk a bit about the NDA grant program and some things related to that. And then we'll do our normal roundtable where each neighborhood will have a chance to give us a little update on what you've been up to, projects you've been working on, events, ways that the neighborhoods can work together, and so on and so forth. So, any questions about where we're headed today? Excellent. I'm gonna turn it over to Steve to start about capital projects.
Go to the next page.
Yes.
Okay, these are the capital projects we expect to get under bid and under construction this season, this year, 2020. We expect to complete some of them. Some of these will last 2 years. So, and I listed all the capital projects because whether they're east or west of 224, if you're driving around, they may impact your travel. So I want people to be aware of what we are building and where it is. Omark Drive up in the industrial area, the North Milwaukee Industrial Park, we are completely reconstructing it. It should just impact the industrial people right on that street. McBride Avenue, again in the North Milwaukee Industrial area, reconstructing it totally between 17th and, what's the north one? Ochoco, is that the north end? Completely being reconstructed. We're adding a sidewalk along an edge of that, doing water repairs, stormwater repairs, a lot of things. Also putting in a new railroad crossing there on it. Lake Road reconstruction, this will impact probably the most people. Totally rebuilding Lake Road between 21st and Guilford. It's staying in the same configuration it is now. We are not adding a third lane to it. We are staying with two. We did a traffic study a while ago and determined that everything west of Oatfield could remain as a two-lane road. There was a perhaps project in the capital list calling for a three-lane, $10 million road, and I'm taking that off the board. It's not gonna happen. But this one will disrupt a lot of people because we have to do full depth, tearing the whole road out to the base, rebuilding it all the way up. We're adding bike lanes all the way out to Guilford. They'll connect to the existing bike lanes that are east of there. We're adding as much sidewalk, we're repairing sidewalk and upgrading the ADA ramps. The signalized intersection at Oatfield, to widen the street to the north. Let me get in a little bit details. Most of the widening we're gonna do hold to the north side of the street. We chose that side because the south side has too many utilities on it. So if you drive Lake Road, you see a single cable on the north poles, you see several on the south poles. It costs much more money, it's much more difficult to get the utilities to move several lines than it is to move one line. So we decided to hold the widening mostly on the north side. We're not changing the location of the sidewalks, even though we have the right of way to make it wider. We're not going to eat up people's front yard. We're gonna leave the sidewalk where it is. It means the landscape strip will get narrower. Right now, it's roughly a 6-foot wide landscape strip. It'll become a 2-foot wide landscape strip. We will be disrupting some trees. We're thinking of replanting trees still in the right of way, but it'll be on the outside edge of the sidewalk. People might think that's their front yard, but it actually is the right of way. But we do want to replace the trees we're cutting down to widen the street. So that's a project that's underway right now. We do expect to hold an open house on that. I think it is February 19th, but I'll have to double check. I'm pretty sure we're gonna have our first public open house on that. Meek stormwater pipe is out to bid right now. We expect to get that under construction within a couple of months. That's just the south phase. So it's basically what we know as the Murphy property south and east. So it's gonna make disruptions on Monroe, on Oak, on railroads south of 32nd. We're gonna cross Harrison, and that work will be done at night because we don't want to disrupt too many people during the day. And then the pipe goes on up to the Murphy site for a short ways. But that'll be under construction this spring into summer, into the early fall too. Linwood Avenue reconstruction, we're handling the part between Monroe and almost to Harmony. We're not going down to Harmony because that intersection's a mess and we don't want to touch it. We're going to stay a little bit north of that. We are going to restripe it though. So we're going to restripe it so that right now if you go north on Linwood, there's a really wide area right next to the 7-Eleven. That's going to become a single lane, 12 feet. We're going to add a center lane, a through right lane, and we're adding a bike lane on the street. Most of the other construction on Linwood is going to comprise of adding 2 10-foot multi-use paths on either side of the street. So we're taking the bike lane, we're cutting it off the street, so the street width will get narrower. It'll go down to about 24 feet. There'll be a curb, there'll be a landscape strip, there'll be a multi-use paths on either side. So if you're riding your bike or taking your kid to Linwood Elementary, you won't be on the street. You'll be on a grade-separated pathway. We're trying to get parents and their kids to ride their bikes or walk on this area more. Project's gonna get underway this summer, and it's scheduled to last until fall of '21. River Road 22nd, we're adding a sidewalk to the west side of 22nd and to the east side of River Road. And we're doing an overlay of the street, so there'll be new asphalt out there. We're also doing some stormwater work, some water work, but that will get underway this summer. We do have 2 seasons allocated for it, but I'm hoping we get a contractor who wants to come in and knock it out. We get it done in 1 year. Again, I don't know exactly the details until we hire a contractor.
And just to interject, and that's actually an open house on February 19th at the Grange Hall.
That is it. Okay, so that's the River Road. So I'll double check when Lake Road is, but I know we're looking to schedule that this month too. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
43rd Avenue, House Street. 42nd Avenue, we decided to combine these two projects. 42nd got more complicated in some of the things we're trying to do there, but it was small. It was still only a half a million dollar project. And 43rd's about a $2.3 million project. I think we can get a better price for 42nd, combining it with 43, because the contractor will have his crews out there. They can jump from one street to the next street. Similar work, some water line work on 42nd, sewer work on both 42nd and 43rd, and then we're upgrading sidewalks and doing curb and gutter and some concrete work. And then 43rd's getting completely, I don't think it's completely rebuilt. We're reshaping the street and resurfacing the street. But that'll have a sidewalk on the east side on 43rd. On the west side, it'll have the same 10-foot wide multi-use path for bikes and for peds. We don't have as much right-of-way here as on Linwood, so we couldn't put two 10-foot paths in without really just eating up the entire street and having a big wide path of asphalt and concrete, which I didn't care for. I think most people would like the look of. We had our first open house on that last week. It was generally very well received. I did not get any complaints at all about the street or the configuration or our thoughts. We had 30 or 40 of the residents show up and look at that. All right, next page. And this is where we're at again. So you can see a lot of projects I just described are all in red. Those are the ones going under construction this summer and some will last into next year. What I have located, shown in purple, are private developments that we expect to kick off in the next year. The major one that's generated the most comments by far is the Mural Apartments, but we still expect that to get under construction. I think they said August, September time frame. Coho Point, I think Layla was looking at about a year from now for that to get going. And a little 2-lot one on Mullen, it just extends as little straightaways and 2 lots up there. But that is all we have in the hopper right now for private development to kick off in the next year. There might be more projects with a lot of other stuff that I have staff looking at or checking things, but nothing set in stone right now. And the blue is what we either have or expect to have in design phase in the next year. Next winter, depending on load, I'll be adding some other projects to this as staff time becomes available. But everything in blue, we're going to start with design. I threw the Monroe Street Greenway on there because it's such a popular project in the city. Because that's being funded largely through federal grants or state grants, we can't manage the project. We have to work through ODOT. ODOT has to hire both a design consultant and hire the contractor. We will have a lot of input in what the project looks like, but we physically can't manage it ourselves. It's the way the laws are set up with federal funds and state funds. But everything else is going to be going, and hopefully is designed between now and next spring and summer, and a lot of the stuff in blue we hope to have under construction in summer 21. And that's where I'm at, yes.
What is the bottom right? Hemlock? I can't.
Plum, apple, and hemlock storm.
Okay.
We have issues with all 3 storm lines. We're combining them in one project, do all the repairs there at once.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm open. That's my 40-minute speech in 15 minutes.
Very good.
Yeah, what are you doing with your spare time?
I'm waiting to answer questions.
So can you go in a little bit more on the Monroe Greenway? So we're gonna have a little bit of input, and that's
Dave,
it.
speak into the microphone.
He did, that microphone.
Yes.
Don't like microphones.
I spent too many years with microphones.
I've watched things that have been recorded in this room before, and I know if you don't speak into the microphone, it doesn't get picked up.
So concerns about the input for the Monroe Greenway project, and how's that going to come about if the city's not involved? Isn't the people doing the majority of the work?
So I'm offering to take this one. So the city will definitely still be involved. So this project is quite expensive. So for me, we kind of do a cost benefit analysis. So if it's around that $10 million mark or more, it starts to be worth the challenges of federal money. And this one is big enough that it crossed that threshold, and we have a highway intersection project that's a part of the Monroe Greenway at 224 anyway. So we were gonna be working with ODOT anyway, and the fund sources that we needed, it pushed us into that federal category. So yes, all federal money needs to flow through. We're not a certified agency, but I've already alerted to them to the high stakeholder interest and the need for stakeholder engagement on the project, and we will be involved in consultant selection. We will be involved in setting the scope for that project, and I don't foresee really anything being successful that doesn't incorporate stakeholder engagement and feedback into that project. So yes, there is another layer, but I'm hoping that from the community's perspective, you'll still feel engaged in participating in the project design. So that's the objective.
Thank you.
So are you confident that the money that we're getting is enough to cover the cost? Because it seemed when we were on the committee that the estimates were higher than that.
Never. I'm never confident that we have enough money. Sorry, and that's on tape for everyone. Yes. I think that will always be elements that at some point may need to be value engineered out or may not be able to be constructed, but we did get to a threshold where I feel comfortable we have enough to have a real project and to proceed. So without any design and real cost estimates, no, I can't promise you all of what's included, but I do feel very good that we've crossed into a point where we can have a real project and we should initiate design and we should get going and that we can fund a substantial portion of the project and hopefully the whole thing. So.
Well, because of, the part that needs it most is on the east end, and so we would hope that that would get a priority if there was a fund issue.
Yeah, and that is part of what they're gonna have to look at with their design, the whole thing, but how to phase it, how to do all that, and then that's Steve smarter at answering all those than me, but that will be the exercise that they go through. But like I said, my hope is that with the different fund sources, so we just got a grant, $3.8 million from Metro. We had basically the 224 elements were funded, so that's $2 million worth of signal improvements were funded through ODOT, and then we got an additional $3 million from ODOT, 3.1 or 3.3? Let's say 3.1. 3.1 million from ODOT to do greenway improvements. And then also we have additional elements that we hope are being constructed through private development. So when you add all that together, it's starting to fill out the package. Yeah.
So, Kelly, the signal improvements on 224, was that just Monroe or some of the other, like Oak?
So that's a good question. So the one that I specifically, that we need for Monroe is Monroe and 224, but ODOT, it has a longer 224 ITS, Intelligent Transportation System. So they're doing more signals than just that. And I'm hoping they combine this with that bundle of projects. So for me, I care about the Monroe one, but ODOT itself will have additional signal work that happens as well. Yeah.
So is Monroe a city street?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm always confused. What is city? What is county? What is
So I think
ODOT?
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, it is confusing. So 224, clearly
It's
ODOT,
right,
right? So
it's
Monroe, from downtown all the
Uh-huh.
way to Linwood is city. On the other side, it's county.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
am I right about that?
Yeah, the streets are very difficult to understand here. Actually, right now, the final block of Monroe still is county authority, going from 60th to Linwood. We are going to ask the county to relinquish that, which they will. They'll give us any street we want, believe me. So we're gonna get that block given to us this spring, so that we have it during the construction, so we can do that. But throughout the city, it gets very confusing, because you have streets that are within the city that are annexed, and we have, but still are maintained by Clackamas County. So we
Right.
annex the college campus out on Harmony, and the whole leg of Harmony going out there, but we don't maintain or own Harmony. It's annexed to the city, the county still maintains ownership of it. They want us to take it over, I've told them, no. Because the intersection at Harmony, Linwood is a mess, and it's a $20 million plus fix, and we don't have the
Yeah.
funds for it. So that's gonna stay in county control. Johnson Creek Boulevard is owned by the county, the city, and Portland, depending on what piece you're driving. So, again, it becomes rather difficult in these little pieces. So, right now, we're working with the county in absorbing 4 or 5 streets into the city, and they're already annexed to the city. We're going to agree to take over ownership of them, and we're working through that, and that'll come to council probably in the springtime.
All right, thank you.
You listed 3 private developments.
Yes.
Can you give us a 30-second update on Elk Rock Estates?
Elk Rock Estates is going back to Planning Commission, or I think last month? They scaled that down tremendously. It's gone from the 13 units down to 5, and all 5 border on 22nd. And they're just going to. 19th, I'm sorry. One more street over. Sorry, thank you. All 5 border on 19th, and so it's been scaled down drastically. That's the last set of plans I saw that they're working with in order to meet the floodplain impacts and whatnot, but. Yeah.
And will there be another land use thing about it, or is that passed?
I would say talk to Vera. She's the
Okay.
one that's controlling that and has her finger on the pulse of that. Once it got scaled way down, it became kind of a much easier project and didn't take a lot of my concern anymore.
Yeah. Thank you.
I got 2 questions. First off, where you showed the Monroe Greenway, where it goes up Washington, down Ada, up home, the neighborhood is really hoping that the Monroe would go farther, at least up a little closer to Safeway, so we had safe walking route to Safeway from along Monroe, which if we go with strictly Washington, Ada home, we won't get that, I'm assuming. That's the first question.
Okay, that decision was made before I got here. This is alternate 2, I'm told. Alternate 1 went straight down Monroe, but I'm told that council approved alternate 2.
I understand that, but the neighborhood was hoping that initially when we were discussing Monroe Greenway, a lot of people were in favor of it because it was a safer walkway to get to the Safeway complex area. If we are not putting that piece in from about 42nd or 44th down to Home Avenue, then that's a big chunk that's still not a safe route to walk.
Yeah, I'd have to kind of reiterate what Steve said in terms of the alignment selection. So we're not going back on that. That's what we're designing this alignment. If you've identified safety issues or pedestrian connectivity issues related to that area that we need to think through more with more like the next round of safe or future rounds of that, or we've had some interest and concern with pedestrian connectivity around 42nd. We probably need to kind of just raise it separately.
Okay.
I wouldn't see it being a part of that project scope because it's not in the alignment.
Yeah, well-
But I think that, I know that when Bernie came and talked, he had some specific pedestrian connectivity issues that actually did become a part of, like, so Washington, there's some sidewalk that's actually in scope that's not right on the alignment. So there are some, but I don't believe that was a part of that, unless I'm forgetting, which I might be, but.
Well, when we had the
Yeah.
big open houses before the formal
Yeah.
adoption of the Washington route, that was part of the discussion, was being able to,
Yeah.
the Monroe project would basically go from 42nd
Yeah.
east, with the rebuild. And this is the first I've heard that we're not doing that part of that 42nd to Home Avenue section of the Monroe Greenway.
Well,
So-
let me circle up and look because I might be missing something.
Okay.
The only thing I do want to say is if I'm missing a part of something that should have been a part of this alignment, that was that, then I'm happy to be educated because
Okay.
it's the right time to do it. I will just caution that we can't build both alignments. So if this is something that was in the Monroe Street alignment and it's not here, then it would be out of scope. So let me go back and kind of see what you're referencing.
Okay.
And go from
And then
there.
the second
Yeah.
question is, what's gonna happen at Monroe in 224?
The full signal's coming out and a bike and pedestrian signal's going in. So it'll be just for bikes and peds crossing there.
So it'll be a right in, right out on both sides.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is going to take a lot of outreach.
Hi. I'm going to go back to, sorry, my voice isn't the best. Going back to the Meek storm pipe project, it looks like it goes right up 29th, and that's what you're discussing. So that was just re-asphalted last year, the whole
Yes.
thing. And so what is the time frame you're looking at for that entire stretch? Because that is essentially our neighborhood's conduit to the Springwater Corridor Trail. for bikes and pedestrians as well.
So, since I've been here, the route for the Meek Street storm had always been on the railroad alignment. The railroad was difficult to work with and continued to be difficult to work with. And so I started talking to the project manager and to Kelly, so well, is it possible to take it up 29th and do a lift station, a stormwater lift station in the hillside development and the big field they have on the northwest corner of their site? And we would save $1.3 million in purchasing property from the railroad, and I was gonna use that money into the lift station and repositioning the pipe. The other problem with the railroad is that anytime you're in the railroad zone, you had to have railroad certified flaggers to work with you. So anytime we did any kind of maintenance or any kind of work down there, we would have to have them come out and flag the work for us to make sure the crews were safe. It just became really difficult dealing with them. So finally, we decided that we're gonna go down this other path. And unfortunately, if we had known all this a couple years ago, we would save some money and not have paved 29th then. We would be doing it now. The redesign is just started about a month ago, and so I don't have any plans. I don't know what's happening with the location of the pipe or anything there. But
Yeah,
it will impact travel again in your
Yeah,
neighborhood.
because this
yes.
is the first I've heard of it, and it's my neighborhood, and I'm land use chair, so that,
Can I just add one thing? So, it is still a ways out, so this is not on the same time frame as the meek that's happening this summer, because it got separated, because we
Okay.
had these challenges. And the real question that we grappled with is, we know 29th is important, and it's actually a greenway, and so we sort of had this, okay, should we keep trying to spend, $1 million+ to buy railroad property, or would it be smarter to actually invest that money in making the street better for bikes and peds, if we're gonna be there anyway? So we certainly don't want to be cutting open streets. We have specific rules and protocols around not cutting open streets. We've just finished, where all we've done at this point is say where we were gonna be doesn't seem like a great idea. We want to explore 29th and see if this could be a good option for us. And so they're starting that design process now. But part of why we thought it could be a better use of city money is because we could actually be investing city money in making the street work more like a greenway. So it's not surprising that you haven't heard, it's pretty early, this change is pretty new. So it's not surprising that you wouldn't have heard about it yet. It won't be happening on the same time frame as this first phase of Meek.
so when do we think this will happen?
The earliest construction will start on this north phase is summer of '21.
Okay. And just from looking at it, do you think a lot of trees will
I have
be
no idea.
impacted?
We haven't even seen a single sketch. All we've
Okay.
seen was a line on the street. I don't know if it'll be on one side or the other side. We have some other pipes that we want to fit. If we can get the depth correct, we want to intercept some of the east-west storm pipes so they don't just discharge down on the railroad tracks anymore. We like to take that water into the Roswell reservoir, but I don't even know the depth of the lines we're catching and what it's going to take. It's all really, really early
Okay,
on.
just put in your head to think about that part of the reason why it's such a nice and attractive place for people to walk and bike is the trees. So,
Okay.
I was a little bit late getting here and I missed the Lake Road part. Is there any plans for improved pedestrian crossings on any of the intersections of Lake Road?
What we plan to do right now, we're in a pretty tight budget. I've asked the project manager to put conduit underneath the road surface at 27th, so we could do a electronic crossing signal there in the future. To me, that's kind of the key point because it services both the elementary school and the high school. The other thing we're doing there is the school flashing beacons, the ones that are on the lake we're doing, not the ones up by Rao, but the ones on the lake. We recently found out that every single school flashing beacon in the city is no longer supported by Clackamas County. They have the software and the parts to maintain them, and they're no longer supporting them. They support a new system of flashing beacons. So our goal is to upgrade the flashing beacons both here and on Linwood, where we have 2 other ones too. The other thing is there's not enough beacons placed for police to enforce them. So the way the laws are written, when you say school zone when flashing, every single right-of-way that comes into that school zone when flashing has to have a beacon. Otherwise, if you come off a side street, 26th or 28th or something, and you're in the school zone, if you don't have a beacon flashing in front of you, the police can't cite anybody because they don't know where you came from. So we're short probably 13 to 15 flashing beacons in the city to make our school zones legally enforceable. And I recently reached out to the school district, explained the situation to them. We've offered to help find grants to fund these, the replacement of the existing 10 and the addition of the other 13 to 15. And I have not heard back from the school district yet. I just sent that email out probably a week or 2 ago. But that's where we're at on that. And then the other crossings, we're not putting in any enhanced crossings right now because of the budget. But if we can find money in the future, when the conduit's in the ground, that's one of the major costs getting across the street. And the next cost is just the equipment you install. So we'll preparing ourselves for a future electronic crossing, basically.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Steve. Wow, that was good. No other questions? All right. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
As everyone can see, I think one of the big things to take from this and talk about in your neighborhoods is just there's just a lot going on. Which is a really good way to segue into what Kelly's going to talk about with engagement and the city's goals and the kind of the work that we've been doing lately to try to engage folks, because we have a lot of engagement to do related to these projects and lots of other things that the city's working on. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
All right. Give me my first.
You ready?
Yeah. Okay. So everyone always thinks, not quite sure, like, why'd you pick engagement? And I do have to reiterate what Jason just said. We have a lot to tell people about and a lot to talk about and a lot of information to share. And it's at a level of, particularly on the capital project side, that the city hasn't had. So this is really about, it's not, the great thing about Milwaukee, Steve actually just said it when he sat down. He was like, wow, this is great turnout. And I said, yeah, we have great turnout. People show up, they participate. We have a lot of engagement. I never have to convince anyone to engage, and we're really lucky. And so we don't want to break that. Part of what we did is we grounded this goal from the beginning in sort of just building on the vision. How can we keep what we have and get better? So the first thing we did, we set a goal. Council actually picked this goal. And we said we wanted to provide community-wide, consistent, and meaningful opportunities for residents to engage with their community and in city work. And we picked 3 strategies to implement that. The first one is evaluation. So you can't really do anything until you know what you are doing. So I'm going to tell you some of the things we did in order to just assess what is our existing outreach doing today, where is it working, what are we missing. The next one is standardize and enhance. So we have a lot of different things happening. Some of those projects have outsourced consultants. Some of them are in-house led. And so how can we make sure they're the same across all different types of projects? And how are we triaging our needed outreach levels? And then what kind of training do we need to do for our staff to help them be where they need to be? And then the last one, we just didn't want to miss this one, is our events. So the events in Milwaukee have grown and are a point of community pride. And so we wanted to commit to, from the very beginning, is not cannibalizing or undermining those events in this process. We didn't want to lose, again, we don't want to lose what we have. We want to build from here. What was my next one? I haven't given this. I gave this to council. When did I do it? Councilor Heisey, like 2 months ago? I might be a little stale. So I'm going to start with what we've been up to. So on the evaluation side, we had 2 major elements. One is a community survey. So we did a community survey in 2017 400 residents, statistically valid, asked a whole bunch of different questions. We went back out with that last month, and I added some new questions related to where do you get information from, how do you communicate with the city, but mostly a lot of it's the same as what it was. I just got the results back from that. I'm still kind of digging through them, but that's my way of saying, okay, what are folks interested in? Where are we talking to them? Where do they want to talk to us? The next thing we did is we contracted with Portland State University to do, I'm calling it like an engagement audit. So we basically handed them all our stuff, like here's the different reports we did for these different planning efforts, these are our events, and have them kind of look through and then tell us, like, okay, we think you're doing well here, we think you're kind of missing it over there. And so they're working through that right now and expect to give us their findings back in March. Again, they're the same reaction I had when I got to Milwaukee. They're like, wow, people engage. And I'm like, yeah, other cities have the issue of, oh, we have to go to online engagement because we're not seeing turnout at our events. That's not what's going on here, which is great. I think for us, it's just who are we seeing and who might we be missing. So one of the things I know early on in our results that we're seeing is definitely some stress coming from folks that are lower income, have children under 18 living at home, are relatively new to the city, and renters. So we need to probably spend some time looking at, okay, how are we getting to those folks, and do they feel like they're engaged in our work? So there's going to be some findings like that, but that's where we are for now. So I'll have more to share on that in the next couple months. Regarding standardizing and enhancing, this is a lot of internal work, which is why you may not have heard much about it. So created a staff task force. Jason's on it. And that is, I have folks from all across the city, police, engineering, planning, and we're all looking at what are our roles and responsibilities around engagement, what tools and resources do you need in order to do your job well. And they're helping me come up with all of those kind of boring but very important just guidance documents for our team. The next thing we did is we formally said we're going to go with the International Association of Public Participation values. So I don't know if you've ever heard of IEP2. I don't know why you would, but they're kind of the gold star for what makes good sense for outreach and what you should strive for. And one of the coolest things they have that we're spending a lot of time with our staff looking at right now is it's called the spectrum. So you can go all the way from informing people to empowering people. So informing, we do a lot of it actually, and you kind of need to do it well, but you're basically just saying, this is what we're doing, right? Empowering someone is fully handing over a decision. So I don't know if you, the council compensation work that just happened where we had, that was actually an example of an empowerment exercise where we brought in people, spent a lot of time, got them up to speed, and fully empowered them to give us a recommendation. So there's a whole bunch in between those two things, but deciding up front what level of engagement you're going to have and communicating that to the folks that you're involving is kind of the most important part. Because what happens is if you say, I'm empowering you, and then I just inform you, makes people really mad. So so that's part of that kind of initial assessment work that we're working to get some more clarity on at a staff level so that we can be upfront with everyone when we're going through that work. We also, and by we, I mean Stefan, created a city leadership program, which has been great, and that is bringing a whole host of kind of new folks in to learn about city work. I think they've been meeting for 5 months, about. I think they've got, does it conclude with the state of the city, or does it keep going? I think they...
Well, I think this one wraps up in May.
May, okay. My
And then
apologies.
Presumably
Yeah.
will continue again next year.
Yeah.
I hear a we in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, again, this city leadership program, again, there's a lot. You all are experts in city business. You know who the people are. You know who to call. Folks that are new to the city don't necessarily know that. So this is a way for us to try to bring them in, and hopefully they're future NDA meeting participants as well, because they're learning about all the different city committees and things that we have. Super boring, but we had a database called Com Contacts that no one could use anymore because it was an old Access database. I think it was the bane of Jason's existence. It worked on maybe one computer. That needed to go away, and we needed a real stakeholder database that actually functioned, and we now have that. What's it called?
It is called Onboard.
Called Onboard, and we now have it. We're switching over to it. I probably shouldn't have even talked to you about it, but I am actually really excited about it. But this is another thing. You have to have a good systemic way to keep track of who wants to be engaged, and we have that now.
And I recently reached out to all the NDAs. That's exactly why I asked for making sure our contact information was up to date. And then it also keeps all the contact info for our boards and commissions and other community folks as well. So it's really helpful.
Then this is actually, pretty complete now. So restructure and add capacity to support the engagement goal. So the most important thing that you need to know about this is that Jason has a new title and a new job. And he's the community programs coordinator now. Community engagement, thank you. Community engagement coordinator. I'm still learning the titles.
I can
Thank
barely
you.
remember it myself.
No, I came up with that title and I still messed it up. So, the reason why, so what we did is we pulled, Jason's been really, he's had a lot of his time go to our events. He's really good at events, probably too good at events. So if you tried to talk to Jason between October and the end of December, he was hard to talk to because he was trying to get Umbrella Parade done. Getting the solstice is not a small thing. As our events have grown and grown, some of the work that he would spend, like working with our NDA leaders, doing other engagement activities, had been used with events. So what we've done, thanks to the fact that the council supported this priority, is we put some resources into hiring an events coordinator. Particularly with the Carefree Sunday event, you should talk to Portland. They do a similar event, and they have about 30 people that work on it. So that, in and of itself, and the sponsorship level and all that, is a huge thing for us to get dedicated staff support. So what this does is it allows Jason to use his experience and expertise in engagement and expand that and help us, again, standardize and enhance what we do. So that's why his title is different.
And I'm sorry, what is your new title?
Community engagement coordinator.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
word that changed from
Yeah.
community to engagement.
Yeah.
So,
And he loves it when I spend a lot of time talking about it. But so that's our reorganization, and we're hiring. I think we have interviews for the events position on Friday. So hopefully we'll get that person on soon, and then you'll get to work with them as well.
Yeah, and another thing about that position, just real quick, they're also going to do some help with volunteer coordination. So like our Adopt a Road program that I currently help with, they're going to take over that. They're also going to be kind of taking care of the stuff a little bit more. So like the trailer, the NDA trailer, things of that nature, all of our stuff that we have available, they'll be managing that a little bit more. So we'll have to clarify that at some point, sort of like my role with the NDAs and like what this person's also going to be helping the NDAs and others with related to events. We'll be figuring that out, so bear with us. You can always come to me for a while until we figure it all out, of course, so. You know.
And I will say, it is part of why we're doing weird stuff, like making you talk into these microphones, because I'm trying some things out. So this is a lot of helpful information, but I'm only giving it to you all. So we were saying, okay, what if we tape it? Do people like that, or does it make everyone uncomfortable and they don't want us to tape it anymore? So tell me that afterwards. We don't. We're just trying to find more ways to share work with people, so that they can learn more about what we do. So this was my idea. So if you don't like the taping, you can blame me. Do I have another slide?
I think so, yeah. With this.
Oh, I have so many slides. Yeah, so this is more with me going over the audit again. I really want to know particularly where we sit with our outsourced engagement in particular. And one of the ways that we'll standardize is around how we contract with those. So does our scope look the same? Whether I hire Enviro Issues on an engineering project, or I hire JLA Public Involvement on a planning project, do I have a similar framework of expectations as what they'll do, so that when you all attend, it feels the same? So that's what this is. And then they're also going to be giving us some best practices. So they're going to look at what we do, how we do it, who we're missing, and then what are other cities doing that might be good for us to do as well.
Share the community survey topics.
Oh, look, these are the things that we put in the survey I told you about. All the good stuff: downtown safety, utilities, streets and sidewalks, future growth and development. So I'm talking to council on tomorrow, about this, and we have our Patinkin strategies is coming to give kind of an overview of what they found. So if you're interested in that, it'll be on tomorrow night. And we can share that with you as well. It's the next one.
Changes to survey.
Yeah, that's what has changed. I tried to keep it the same, like I said, from last year, so that we can start to get trend information. So we will be doing this every other year. So I didn't want to change too much from 2017 as a result. But I did want to also capture any new goals we had. So it does touch on our the forestry work, the tree preservation work, the climate action work, and the housing affordability. Spoiler alert, all of those things are actually quite popular. People are really interested in what the council's been working on with respect to those items. So that was pretty reaffirming. This is the spectrum. I'm not going to tell you any more about this because I forgot these slides were all in here. We already talked about it. Well, actually, I'll go back. Do you want to talk about the spectrum? Anyone? No? You can always ask a staff person, what engagement level do you think this is going to be? It's not a bad question, honestly. And that'll give you a sense of kind of what you're getting into as well, because you can expect as the level of engagement goes up that you as a participant will be spending more time on it. Right? You higher engagement is more intense process.
That is on our website.
Yeah. Well, I can put this on any website, the whole presentation, but that spectrum is,
on
if
the
you even
website.
just Google IAP2 spectrum, it'll pull up.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. So it's a good way to actually just ground yourself in the outcomes and how much influence whatever group it will be having over them. The engagement plan for the engagement plan. That's my job, is still doing, and most of this is actually internal work. The hiring a new team member, about to do it. I got my survey results and I'm doing my budget. We've gotten PSU, I think, everything they need at this point, so I hope to see a first draft of that soon. This last item, I don't know if we're going to talk too much about that tonight, but again, part of my question for you all moving forward is what might be helpful with the NDAs in terms of engagement. We're talking about, like, having sort of a community event to invite people in to learn more about the NDAs, get to know the leadership. Is that the right approach, or is there surveys we could be asking more folks, like, how they would like to be involved in NDAs? So there's some engagement work here with you all that we'll be having more conversations about. How can we best support that? And so that was my item for that. I think that's all I was gonna do. Yes.
I have a question for you. I've seen those before. I was pretty sure that's what that was.
Yeah.
So I've been a part of the comp plan committee, and that work has, at different times, included a whole lot of discussion about the creation of a real focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. How would that fit within the next steps and where you're headed?
That's a really good question. So the two issues are, you can't really talk engagement without talking diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, we've been pretty intentional about, I don't say diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI now, because frankly, it's not resourced. Like, we did this first step to find out who we're missing. And like I'm already seeing in the survey, we're missing people of color, we're missing low-income people, we're missing people with children under 18 living at home. There are some folks that we're not getting to. And so to me, that's our next step, is to try to, okay, where do we need to be, and how can we help use our engagement tools and our efforts to bring everybody into the conversation? We are we're grounded in that goal of the vision, which is we truly want to make sure everyone can participate. But our first step was to find out who we weren't getting to. So that, I don't know if that helps, but it's a high priority. This is step one. I view that as step two.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
What does BCC stand for?
Boards and commissions. And I'm supposed to stop saying it. What am I supposed to say instead of boards and commissions? Boards. Because people think it's the Board of County Commissioners.
Just B and C's.
B and C's.
B and C.
I'm supposed to say, and I should just not use acronyms. So it's our boards and commissions and task forces. Yep.
And there's a slide at the end about some upcoming things, but this is probably a good time to mention a few things about engagement in terms of the committees that we have right now. So as you likely have all saw, we're putting together a committee right now to figure out what to do with City Hall once we move our services over to a new building. Those applications due by February 14th, so if anybody's interested or if you know anybody in the neighborhood, please have them submit their applications in. The other one is the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, CPIC. Those are also due February 14th, so I would encourage folks who would like to be involved with that to submit it. And then the last one is Volunteer of the Year. We'll be taking nominations for Volunteer of the Year until February 10th, at which point I will be combining all those together. So please submit nominations. Even if you've submitted nominations in the past for someone and they didn't win, please give them again to us. We don't look back at past ones, so you do have to submit those folks every year. So if you know good people, they just have to be in the city. They don't have to actually even live in the city. If they do volunteer work in the city in some way that benefits the city, they can be nominated as well. So, yeah.
Do you have any other questions? I talk kind of fast. Thanks for your patience. I know it's hard to listen to someone just talk about all the ways they're planning to engage you, but everything's still moving as we go. So you'll be seeing lots of different open houses and meetings and committees forming the whole way, but you might start to see a shift in how those are run over time. And also, I will also say part of my goal is to make sure we're targeting the right engagement to the right stuff. Because we are burning some people out. There are a lot of things happening, and so we can't form a committee for everything. So how are we assessing those engagement levels in the right way at the beginning of a project? Hopefully in a way that respects the time of the people we're asking to participate. So that's it.
Thank you. Any other questions? We're actually right on time. This is good.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
We just real briefly discussed this brand-new leadership opportunity, and I want to make sure, I was told that it was definitely going to continue. In fact, there was a waiting list for the very first session, but I want to make sure that that's accurate, because you sort of said, well, we think it's going to continue.
I will raise my hand again to help make it happen.
I think we're planning to do round 2. So what it goes beyond that, I don't know, and I can confirm that with Ann. I'm not asking. My hesitation is just because I haven't been as closely involved with it, so I don't know the details of when it's supposed to start. But my understanding is yes, there's definitely a second round.
I would say that being about halfway through the first year, we're already realizing some things we should have done differently, and things we can do better and all that.
Great.
So, it won't be. I don't think it'll be quite the same next year, but I sure see it continuing.
Okay, great.
Thanks. All right, we're going to move into our next topic, which is neighborhood boundary adjustments. So, just a little bit of history in this. We talked probably, I think, at a neighborhood leadership meeting, it's probably more than a year ago, about some boundary adjustments that Hector Campbell had ideas about, and I think we put up a map at one point, and there was also Historic Milwaukee had mentioned an interest in potentially moving the area that's in Lake Road right now that kind of covers Milwaukee Elementary School and Milwaukee ball fields, potentially putting that in Historic Milwaukee. Originally, around that same time, it was understood or thought that possibly those kind of ideas and changes could be part of the comp plan update. And so that's been kind of in that, and it was kind of in that court for a while. The plan director, Denny Egner, and others at planning had talked about it a little bit, and the idea at this point isn't necessarily to do it in the comp plan update, but rather do it with another format, possibly just a resolution to city council. Kind of leaves the ability to leave it a little, I guess, allow the changes to be a little bit more fluid over time rather than just tying them directly to the comp plan update, which is only done, every so many years. So, Dave Aschenbrenner from Hector Campbell had asked to talk about this again, and it's a good time to do so. We don't really have a great process to do this. I mean, we've never actually changed the neighborhood boundaries since they were created. And they were all based on the school district's elementary school boundaries pretty much, which, as everybody knows, has changed dramatically over the years. So they don't really apply anymore. We can't just easily throw that down and say, well, that'll work. So what I did was, from talking to Dave and then the other conversation we had in Hector Campbell, I did have come up with some maps. That map up there actually depicts the changes, I hope I got this right, Dave, that Hector Campbell has asked about, along with Historic Milwaukee. And you have copies of that. The map that you have, one side of it is the way that it looks currently, and then the side that says draft up on the corner in red are the edits. So if you flip it really fast, you can kind of see the change. No, I'm kidding. Does everybody have that map?
Yeah, but
No?
I don't see the difference.
Hangy piece right there.
You have that map. I can actually put one up on the TV here too if we want. Let me put it on the TV up here, and that might actually be more helpful than that map over there. That's fine.
The historic, it's bigger.
So,
The elementary school.
if I flip this back and forth, you can actually see it this way. I wasn't joking about that. You can kind of see. If I take
Some of this.
I'll point out the changes that we have here.
This, they have 27.
So,
Oh, you might. Keep pulling.
all right.
On Lake Road,
You need a
it was
pointer.
on,
Keep pulling.
historically, it's on Lake Road.
Just curled.
Undo that.
Lake Road
Oh, the other way around, okay. This is after.
All right, so,
The new one?
You like
Dave,
it
you can
that way.
probably describe this better than I can, but essentially, like, it would take the section that's in historic Milwaukee now, that's along 224 here, add it to Hector Campbell, and use, basically, which street is that? Harrison.
Basically, what it does is it makes the boundary of Hector Campbell,
Point it out to me.
Harrison Street to 42nd, 42nd to King Road, being major arterials for the definition between the two neighborhoods, or the three neighborhoods. And then the little piece on the, down by 224 that's historic Milwaukee, would be happy to reach out to those folks, if you don't want to creep crossing 224.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about process. We don't have it like necessarily nailed down, but some ideas of how we can make this work to make sure that people are notified and that we actually engage people in this, so they don't wake up one day thinking, I'm in historic Milwaukee and now I'm in a different neighborhood. And then the historic Milwaukee change, and Ray, please chime in if need be, was the idea was basically to get the Milwaukee Elementary School and the Milwaukee High School fields into historic Milwaukee, I believe, when we originally talked about it. Is that true?
Well, that's kind of where I put the line, but the actual goal is, like the street I live on,
Yeah.
is not an arterial, it's 27th Avenue, it has the elementary school on it. The people on one side of the street are in one neighborhood, and the people on the other side of the street are in another neighborhood.
Yeah, kind
And
of confusing.
it, and we see each other all the time.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. So the solution was not necessarily to cannibalize the school or the fields or whatever. It was just to make a boundary that's not you know, down the middle of
Down
the
the middle of the
neighborhood
street.
street.
Natural.
Gotcha.
So it goes like along the backyard fences to keep the two sides of the street in the same neighborhood? Is that what you mean?
Or just open.
I'm not sure I understand. So,
So instead of one side of the street and the other side of the street, and there's the line, the backyard fences on this side of the street would be the divider?
well, in the backyard fences is the elementary school
Oh,
and the Lake
I see.
Road fields.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well,
So they could actually maybe be in both neighborhoods, it could be the
Gotcha.
fences,
Yeah.
actually.
I think when I looked at it and I kind of threw this down was, this was a more, major street that actually came all the way through, to make it a little bit more cleaner. But
Okay.
we can also adjust that as well. I mean, if,
And,
you know.
I haven't had any conversations with the Lake Road neighborhood, and I would
Yeah.
think that I would welcome that.
Absolutely.
They might have, I think that part of it also, when we're drawing these, is just how the people, how they relate to, and where they walk to, and, who they
Yeah.
run into, and stuff like that. So,
Absolutely.
you all know I live in Lake Road, but I have a home in historic Milwaukee, but I feel more connected to the downtown, I think, than the Lake Road. I live in Windsor.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead,
We're
Milo.
talking about process.
Uh-huh.
We could also do, let's make a deal. Ray, I'll trade Kronberg Park for all the property west of Highway 99.
Oh,
And make Highway 99 the
Level
divider,
drive.
which is the main highway, and splits the neighborhood.
you'd have to talk to those people. We have quite people from that are involved in our neighborhood and on our
And now that
committees and stuff.
the bridge is open, it's better connected to your neighborhood.
Well,
That was
again,
good.
it's like,
Yeah.
what do those people feel connected to? If they feel connected to Island Station, then by all means, they should be
We've
part
had
of
one
that.
person in probably 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm just going to
Well,
bring this up just
yeah.
because, so Ardenwald will be shrinking quite a bit. And what we've already had, so Eastmoreland wants the north part of our neighborhood. Brentwood, Darlington, and Woodstock wanted our business section on the north side of our neighborhood. So we said, no, Eastmoreland, you can't have our park, because that's what they wanted. They wanted Timon Johnson Park. But we were able to negotiate and work with Woodstock and with Brentwood, Darlington neighborhoods on the Portland side of our neighborhood. And so we all have, 3 neighborhoods have a jurisdiction over the business area, kind of where Jumbo's is and that whole area. So
Gotcha.
that's what we came up with. So actually that area is more covered, if you want to call it, by neighborhoods. It has more oversight, so it's
Right.
a better thing. Anyway, so we share an area. So I'm just saying, it's possible, and I've mentioned this today before, that if you really want that area, we would be willing to share. But, yeah.
I was willing to give you those couple blocks in that area.
I mean, I think that's, yeah, I mean, I think from the city's perspective, from my perspective, I mean, I think when we make these changes, especially in this round, as long as we're not, the goal is it's hopefully to cover it and make it everyone happy with like the first round of changes, so we're not doing this too often. And I think the goal, for me, would be to come up with some sort of like, I guess, criteria. And I was going to talk to you guys about that because that's what I have up here. Is basically to sort of say, well, into the future, we kind of need to create a process that makes sense for everyone to, when we talk about these changes, what should we look at and what should the neighborhoods consider when we're making changes? Because I mean, a lot of it can be very subjective, obviously, and sort of people's perceptions on their neighborhood can be very different from one person to another. So I mean, I put up just some criteria about like, is it mutually beneficial to the affected neighborhoods? Is there an overall sort of community engagement aspect to it that could be improved? Because, as Dave mentioned, maybe some certain folks on his side of 224 don't necessarily relate to historic Milwaukee because of the highway barrier, and things like that can always pop up. So I know we're not gonna solve this tonight. What I'd like you to do, though, is if you would go back to your neighborhoods and talk again about, I can provide these maps. These are the changes that I've seen so far. I think the Hector Campbell one, we might need to tweak a little bit. I mean, the Historic Milwaukee and Lake Road. But I think I got it right for you, Hector Campbell, right? Okay. But we can share more of these maps. We just have a first sort of check-in with the neighborhoods, maybe at your next meeting or one of the next couple meetings. And maybe just have a conversation to say, is there other changes that we would like to see to our boundaries? So we can start pulling those all together. Because I think at some point then we can create a draft map maybe of like all the neighborhoods and start to piece this apart a little bit more. Because yeah, it's been, I think, we've never done this before. So what we're trying to do is create a process that makes sense. And if you have ideas for criteria, like these are just the kind of a first look at, is it mutually beneficial? Is it something that's going to help with, certain people engage with their neighborhoods better if we move their neighborhoods because it doesn't make sense anymore for whatever reason. Is there any other criteria that you guys could think of that we should consider? Those are pretty general, but if you have other ideas even after this meeting, let me know. Or ask your folks, in your neighborhoods as well. I know when I was in Seattle, there were many, many neighborhoods that crisscrossed each other, and it was very confusing. So, I think through this process, as long as it's clear when we're done, kind of whose parts are, so that we know where land use, notices are going, and, all of the things that we need to do to communicate in a good way, so.
Well, no, I guess I would just, anyway, it sounds like, is there anything else from Ardenwell too? Because you're right, I mean, there's a change. It's one of the more significant changes. So is there anything else that we should know based on other conversations y'all have had about this idea in the past? Like, that would be good to know?
I mean, when Davis brought it up before,
Yes.
we were kind of like, no. But again, that's just,
Yeah, but it's not been, okay.
there's been nothing in depth.
Okay.
We need to sit down and discuss it and get everybody's views.
Okay.
I have another question. So here on the map, they show the business industrial and the North Milwaukee industrial. Are they eventually going to form an NDA, actual NDA?
I don't know. They're
You don't think
supposed
so?
to. I mean, it's a gap, back to engagement. It's a gap
But
for
here
us
we
right now.
show
'Cause we
them
don't have-
as the
Yeah.
NDA.
Yeah, we show them as that. They're, they should have an NDA, but that hasn't been established.
Because
so.
they're under Milwaukee City, right? Okay.
Yeah, as far as I can remember, I don't think they've ever had sort of organized groups in those two
That
areas.
might not
And
Just
it,
just because they're businesses, I can understand.
People just
Yeah.
leave and.
They don't feel engaged by them.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways we would welcome that. But, yeah, as far as I know, I know, through different projects, we definitely engage with our industrial areas in specific ways over the years, but having them actually form in a group related sort of to the NDA program, we haven't seen that, so.
It's something we need to put some time towards.
Have you ever had any interest from anyone in that particular area that
No.
wants to be more engaged with Milwaukee?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, to Jason's point, it's come up when we've had specific planning exercises, so with North Milwaukee Industrial Area. But it's usually more, our interest comes from the city side. So we have a project, like Omark. And normally I would tell the NDA, but I don't have that entity then to try to kind of get information out. So what do we do instead? So I don't believe we've received a lot of interest in the past, but we still have a city communication and engagement need that we need to figure out how to move through. But yeah, we show them.
Good.
For each of those areas, for them to form an NDA, is that something you would approach them about, or vice versa, or either?
Either. Yeah, it can come from either direction. And I mean, an NDA, that structure may not make a ton of sense individually. I think it's a conversation to be had.
Yeah, it could just as easily be like We have a downtown Milwaukee Business Association.
Right.
We could have two more.
Yeah, yeah. I'd imagine some of those businesses are in the part of the Chamber of Commerce likely.
Right.
I don't know how many are, but maybe they're not. I'm not totally sure.
And not likely to happen, but one of the things, so we got a little grant to try to look at some shuttle service in the industrial areas, particularly try to get at some of the off-peak users, when the buses stop running but are working at third shift. And so that's something where like a transportation management association structure might actually make more sense if that's the need of the area, but I don't think we're there either. So to be continued. To be continued with the outreach to the industrial areas.
So this slide is kind of talking about the role of the NDAs. So I think like with some of these changes, feel free to work together. Whether it's other meetings or at your meetings to talk about, this stuff and work through. Because I think we would love it if, you guys just kind of work together to figure out the best strategy. Because we don't necessarily know that. But I will tell you that from the city's role, I need to check in with city council about NTA boundary changes, because we haven't really talked to them about that. At least I haven't. So just kind of to see from their perspective where we should go with that or not. The approval criteria I mentioned, and I hate calling it approval criteria because it sounds very land use related. That's the best term I could come up with, but basically some sort of criteria that we can more objectively look at when we're considering, boundary changes over time. And then, I think in the end there would be a lot of, we'd have to mail these areas, start to give a lot of notice to let them know that we're thinking about this, just to make sure people are aware. And then eventually we go to city council by resolution, who would actually make the decision to make the changes. And then, of course, the last part is staff-wise. We have a lot of maps that we've printed, and they're all over the place. It would take us a little bit of time to kind of make that change. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's as we go through this process, we don't want to do it too many times, because it does have a financial impact to the city and staff time and that sort of thing as well. So we'd want to do it once and hopefully get it right for a while. So, and as you know, we do technically change NDA boundaries as we have small annexations, especially in Linwood or Llewellyn. We add pieces onto Llewellyn when those happen. Clackamas Community College was added to Linwood because it was the adjacent NDA. So it does happen. It's just the newly annexed areas. So.
You seem to be making this awfully complicated. If the Chinese can build a 1,000-bed hospital in 6 days, I do not see why moving a few lines on a bit of paper is this complicated.
Well, as I talked about with engagement earlier, there's a lot of people who have a stake in this, and it's my job to make sure they're all going to be okay with it. We've been doing this same neighborhood boundaries for many years, so I won't take this lightly. I can't take this lightly. I'm going to have to go through a certain process. I don't have a process to follow, so I'm also trying to create one. And, we haven't even come up to an agreement tonight on whether or not in the ones that we propose. So, we have a little bit of work to do, so.
May I just ask a question? And
Yeah.
if I missed this, my apologies. You said originally the boundaries were established around the school system and elementary schools.
Right.
So what was the impetus for this change?
These are requests that I've gotten from the neighbor association. So Hector Campbell has made this request. And Historic Milwaukee talked a little bit the last time we had this conversation in an
Okay.
earlier leadership meeting. So.
And what is the reasoning for their requests?
The people we engage with, the neighbors that show up at the meetings, the people that are closest to our neighborhood.
Okay.
A lot of people that are on the other side of Harrison Street for like 4 blocks that are technically in our neighborhood don't really feel like they're in our neighborhood. They feel like they're more wanted to be with Ardenwald or with Llewellyn. And the little piece down at the very bottom that's historic Milwaukee, I chatted with them a little bit about that. There were some developments that have gone on in there that, you know, another set of eyes would have been nice to have had on there if we would have been a closer neighborhood. And there are just some little pockets down there. A lot of that's all commercial, but there are a few houses down in that. There's like 2 blocks worth of houses down in that area. And the question is, do they feel, you know, part of the neighborhood on the other side of 224, or do they feel more a part of the neighborhood that's closer? So it was all basically that, and trying to have some really defined boundaries that, you know, arterials and highways make pretty good boundaries.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
So
I just wanted to comment. That's why the land use that we have between Woodstock, Brentwood, Darlington, and Ardenwald is better for the area, because you have more neighborhoods looking at it, all taking their different perspectives to make it better for everybody there.
So I think this topic's going to be continued to a later, more discussions likely than at the NDA level as well. But thank you. If you have ideas, like I said, for criteria we should be looking at, please send them to me. Or if you have ideas for other boundary changes that your neighborhood has talked about, just make sure you get them to me, because I want to definitely make sure we gather them all up together and we get this conversation right for everybody.
Is
So,
there proposed deadline that we have to make the decision?
is there a
Proposed deadline, do you have like when you need all the information?
No, I don't have a deadline for this. I mean, David would probably like it to happen tomorrow.
I'll go a little bit longer. I've only been working on this a year and a
You're
half.
not gonna get it, David.
But, you know, as soon as we can, I mean, you know, I'm gonna have a conversation with council about it. That's kind of the next steps. But, you know, like I said, if you want to have these conversations at your own meetings, that would be great, just to start to talk about it. And it may be that you're happy with your neighborhood boundaries exactly the way they are, and that's totally fine. There's definitely not, obviously, a requirement to change anything if everybody's okay with it, so.
And I guess I would just only ask, like, Lisa, if you have anything that you can share, the structure or bylaws or whatever is it that outlines that overlapping thing, since we don't, if you wouldn't mind sending that too, just so I can kind of get my head wrapped around how that functions. Is there like a primary and then secondary, or how does that work?
No, it just goes to all the land use chairs. And it's funny, because even stuff that's in Ardenwald, Eastmoreland still comments on it. So. Yeah.
All right.
We do that too.
You do,
The Monroe Apartments is technically in your neighborhood, not mine. And we're happy to come on.
And I just,
Land use issues, you know,
it's interesting.
it's a whole nother thing.
I guess I would just add that as you're having these conversations, I would encourage you to broaden your thinking, not just about boundaries, but to engage in some deeper thinking and dialogue about what makes a neighborhood a neighborhood. Yes, those boundaries, streets that are disruptors, those can all be things, but are there communities that are within your neighborhoods that you aren't connecting with? Is that the problem rather than the boundary? Who's showing up at the meetings? Are there other things that make pieces of the neighborhood seem more or less like a neighborhood that aren't just boundaries?
Good point.
That's true. Thank you. Yeah. All right, so more information on that to come, for sure. Thank you for participating in that conversation. The next topic I wanted to talk about was the grant program. Because we haven't talked about it in a while, and it's something that obviously we use a lot, and there's a lot of great things that happen around town constantly with this grant program. But I wanted to make sure that we talk about it a little bit more often, especially for new people, so that we kind of have an understanding of kind of where it came from, what it's used for. And when we talk about engagement, I think it's our biggest nugget of like how to get people to get involved. You know, if there's a little bit of money available to do things, I think that's a big attraction to folks. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of history. Some folks here know about this because you've been involved for a long time. But in 1998 is when the grant program was created, and I said the purpose of NDAs expanded in 1988, and I think that's true with this grant program. I think it really kind of propelled the NDAs into like the next level of community engagement and getting people involved in the neighborhoods. That was by resolution in 1998. It's 9/1998. The application process back then was we kept the money, and the amounts that we gave the neighborhoods changed over time, 3 or 4 times, I believe. But at that point, it was a matching grant, which is a pretty common thing you see at cities. I mean, you see these kind of all over the place. It's an application process where the neighborhood would have to come up with volunteer time, cash donations, in-kind services, make a request for a very specific project, event, or whatever it might be, and then submit that to the city, who then we would review it and decide if that was fell under the resolution 1998, 9/1998. So that went on until 2011, 2010, 2011 was the fiscal year. Pretty familiar with it because I was actually working for Milwaukee helping with this grant program from 2000 to 2005 or so. So we had a big database that we would track all the stuff that people were working on, all the volunteer time, everything was all tracked. We could, at the end of the year, spit out this big report that said, like, yes, we gave out X amount of dollars, but it generated this amount of volunteer time and this amount of cash and other in-kind services that were donated and all that. So it was really an awesome way to be able to brag about the program and say, with a little bit of money, you can do a lot. And at that time, there were basically 5 criteria about what you could apply for: neighborhood organizing and organizational development, neighborhood physical improvements, neighborhood preservation, neighborhood cultural, social, or recreational initiatives. The grant policy that I handed to everybody that's over on the table has these included in there. And I went through all of the things that people have been doing over the years and put examples of each one of these to kind of give you a better idea of what they actually mean. So when I said that in 2011, we basically went from, you had to apply for the money, you had to find match to, as we all are aware of how the program currently works, is we write a check for $4,000 that gets deposited into the NDA bank accounts. There's no application process, there's no match required. And the big change that was it enabled the NDAs to actually be grantors. I always get that wrong. It gives you the ability for other organizations to come to you for money. That did not exist in the first round of the program. We did have some money set aside at that point for other nonprofits and whatnot to come to the city, but it wasn't an NDA. It wasn't attached to the same money. And I think that's been an amazing way for the neighborhoods to be able to really interact with the needs of your neighborhood, the school system, all of the sorts of things that it's used for. We did a little comparison in 2015 about the matching grants in some similarly sized cities, some a little bit larger. This is 2015, so some of these have changed for other cities, but it just kind of gives you an idea of kind of how much we give and per capita
That's a good one.
compared to some of the other cities around us. So, we do a good job per capita of how much money we actually do provide compared to others. So I just wanted to run through. So the grant policy that you guys have a copy of, it is available online. If you go to the neighborhood tab in the top of the homepage and you go into the grants, there's the policy's in there if you ever need to refer to it. But I just want to go through some of the things that it does fund and some things that it doesn't. And the policy, like I said, I listed everything out that the people have been doing over the years. So if you have an idea and there's something going on, it's not in there, and you're just not sure, feel free to give me a call and we can talk it over and try to figure it out on whether or not it's an applicable use of the funds. So some of the general things, something not open to the public, a personal use or benefit, that would include if the neighborhood bought a lawnmower to mow a common area in the neighborhood. The lawnmower belonged to the neighborhood association, not to the individual who bought it, and it would have to get passed on through the neighborhood association over time. Alcoholic beverages, marijuana, or tobacco products. political donations or advocacy, election campaign activities, that sort of thing, religious organizations, activities or services. That one's a little bit tricky because if there's a rental space in a church that you might want to use for like a meeting, I think that would be an appropriate use. You guys, some neighborhoods struggle with finding a place to meet, so we wouldn't want to hold that back if that's a service that they could provide. And then the last one's debt reduction or legal settlements. I know a lot of you guys have debit cards. We don't want to see folks getting cash back from their debit cards if possible, because there's no money trail related to that. Purchase of land or buildings for NDA ownership, private travel expenses, transportation expenses, projects that don't have property owner permission. That's usually the projects that the grant funding is paying for is usually like related to like a park, that's in public ownership or something like that anyways. Service or activity contrary to federal, state, or local statute. And so improperly using neighborhood grant funds, it does say in the policy, anyone that violates this won't be eligible for future funding. And it is the city's sole discretion whether or not that continues. And then, there's language in there about investigation and forfeiture of access to funds. And, the city's reserves a right to use any and all available remedies, including legal action to secure any improperly used funds. So with all that said, is there any basic questions about some of this basic stuff? And it's in the policy, and I'd encourage you to review it and even go over with it with your neighborhoods in a future meeting, and make sure they know it's on the website. And you can refer to it anytime. But like I said, anytime you're confused, because sometimes there's a lot of ways this money can be used. You get a lot of requests from a lot of different people. Just let me know and we can talk through it. So when I mentioned to you how the program used to be, we used to kind of come up with this big report that kind of like, again, bragged about the program, got it out into the community of what we were doing with the money, kind of inspired people a little bit. So what I did was put together a little report, and there's a one page for each neighborhood essentially. And I took your report from last fiscal year, and tried to figure out so what was like the one big thing that everybody did that you're really proud of. And then I listed out some of the smaller grants that you may have provided others with. What I'd like you to do is just take a look at that. If you don't feel like it's representative of your neighborhood, and kind of what you would like to share with the community, we can definitely edit those as needed. The goal basically is a quick read for people so that they can take a look at this and then, like I said, have a decent idea of what the different neighborhoods are doing related to the grant program. And you don't need to do this right now related to the details. Again, if you want to talk about it in your next meetings, that would be awesome. And if you see anything, discrepancies, that sort of thing, also we can fix it. Because this document is going to be shared online and potentially a little bit in the pilot, those sorts of things, so that we can start to kind of bring to light what everybody's doing. I feel like we talk about all the awesome projects that people are doing, but we don't actually, share it as much as we could be.
Share this with council, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yes. It should say draft on it. I probably should have put that. It's draft. It's not being shared with anybody at this point, except you. So again, we're looking to do this annually, and so this is our first go at it. So I just need your help to make sure it's as good as we can make it. And if you have pictures that I don't have, those are also great. I basically included one picture for each neighborhood to try to sort of get at some of the really, really big project that folks are working on. Some are more obvious than others. But.
Did you put for-profit organisations in your guidelines? I don't recall seeing it. Did I miss it?
Did I put for-profit organizations?
For-profit organisations.
For-profit organizations in terms of receiving funding?
Yes. Is it in the guidelines?
No, because for-profit organizations do receive NDA grant funding. I mean, when folks purchase items for your picnics, you're giving money to a for-profit organization. So I wouldn't be able to limit that.
I wasn't thinking of purchasing things, because obviously we go to the store.
Okay.
Actually giving a grant to a for-profit organisation. A donation, like the fund for the Painted Lady.
Right.
Not that we did, but that's a business.
Yeah, it's something that we can look at. I mean, I think that one's almost like a case-by-case basis, I believe, I think. Because I don't know how I would write that in terms of if I said no for-profit business and somebody wanted to buy cupcakes from the Painted Lady for an event, that's giving money to them.
Well, that's not giving money, that's purchasing the service or goods.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal opinion is...
Just saying a donation to a for-profit
Yeah, my
business.
personal opinion is that I wouldn't vote to give money to a business, a for-profit business.
For nothing in return.
For nothing in return, yes. Nothing, if we wanted to go to Safeways and buy refreshments for our NDA meeting, you're buying something, you're not giving it. I'm actually talking about giving them a cash donation because they want the business is trying to...
Yeah.
So
That's probably a reasonable thing.
that kind of came up with the Chapel Theater and the Milwaukee Arts grant for, was it just the same principle, I think?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, when the request came through, so the Arts Committee is partnering with Chapel Theater to put on performances at Chapel Theater. Chapel Theater is a for-profit business. I think they were possibly planning on being a nonprofit, but they're not. So the Arts Committee is partnering with them. I think they went to some neighborhoods. Did they come to everybody's neighborhoods? Yeah. They requested that money on behalf of the Chapel Theater at first. And I did contact some neighborhoods, and I recommended, since they're partnering with the Arts Committee, to just ask the grant funding to go to the Arts Committee, who is basically going to pay for performers, like actors, I believe, and dancers and that sort of thing, for the performances at the Chapel Theater. Just basically, it allows us to pay the performers directly. The Chapel Theater could do that as well. They could actually get the money, but it's not exactly as easily traceable. I mean, you can't. The trail is a little bit more difficult, and the organization that's backing the actual performance is the Arts Committee. So, I did request that go through the Arts Committee instead. Yeah.
I mean, we can come up with some, we can talk more about the for-profit element. I think the interesting part here is one of the goals of the program is to help incentivize those cultural, kind of like the NDA concerts. So having an event that people in the neighborhood can go to. So I believe is that what was happening with Chapel Theaters? They were providing performances that the folks in the neighborhood would attend. But I can see your point. I also know you guys, there's also a difference between what's in the policy and what prioritizations you guys are making within your NDA. So I know you'd said, hey, we don't want to do that. That's not what our priority is. We'd rather invest NDA resources in this other way. That's not really changing the policy, or it's not changing the policy, it's just prioritizing what you want to do. Yeah.
I'm trying not to keep it to the actual wording of the policy. My problem with it, with the policy is, and I'll take one bit of it, not for personal benefit, but it was all right to give the Chapel Theatre money in a roundabout way to pay people's wages. So you're paying a wage to somebody for their performance. You're giving them a personal benefit.
But we pay people who perform at concerts.
But I think his point is that people have to pay to go to the chapel.
Oh, they were charging a
They were
fee.
charging too.
It's not a free.
Flexible based on if you were able to afford
okay.
to go. So if you said, hey,
But-
I can't afford to go, they would give you a free ticket. That's what the grant said when I read it. That was
Okay.
my
But there's no
Yeah.
criteria for how they
I
chose those
understand that,
people.
but that's what the grant was said. So
Yeah, I know, that's
Yeah.
how we read it too. It's just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like we need to do some.
So when the Arts
clarification.
Mob did the ones down at the food carts, that was open to everybody.
Right.
I
There was
mean,
no
and that
way.
made sense to do
Nobody
that,
bought a
because they were
ticket.
paying the bands to perform, but then everybody and their brother could show up to it.
Right.
This is a little bit different.
So it's not about the Arts Committee accessing the resources, it's about the Chapel Theater, and the Chapel Theater being for-profit and charging a ticket is what
Yes.
caused the,
Right.
the lack of clarity.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I
Yeah,
understand what you're saying.
it's a little different, I suppose, I mean, because it's a venue that's owned by a for-profit business. They're using the venue to put the performance on. And I know the Arts Committee did play, they did a sliding scale, or there was even a night where it's however much you can pay. I don't know if they had criteria based upon that. But, I mean, I think that's the difference. I mean, if it was a free concert, the venue, and again, I think that the difference is that, when you do something in a park, the venue's free.
Right.
Whereas this venue, it costs money for them to operate the venue, and I think they probably wanted to charge money.
Right.
I think
You
some
know,
language clarifying
yeah.
that if it's a for-profit entity, if they're raising money, I think some language around that could be helpful. So I see your point. It's not stated in there now, and I think given the fact that we want to have cultural events for people to attend, we have to be thoughtful about this. But I appreciate you raising it, and maybe we can do more about it.
I'm not
Yeah.
against guidelines.
Yeah.
In the sense, but the problem with guidelines is one, they're open to interpretation. And sooner or later, they trip you up because you want to do something and somebody says the guidelines don't say you can't do that.
Right.
I'd rather, in that sense, the situation is where the NDA's within reason, no alcohol, no marijuana. I understand you didn't put cocaine on there, so that's obviously okay to have cocaine. Opioids, yeah.
That's the next grant report, where
Yeah.
everyone does cocaine.
That's why it's a draft.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
to leave it as open as possible,
Yeah.
without, I sort of wear two hats, because that's the NDA and I vote on them, and as everybody knows, I come round once a year with the begging bowl for a particular event.
Right.
And it's nice to know what
Yeah.
each NDA will and will not donate to. And I put a grant in, and I have no expectations that any NDA will give me money, and I'm very thankful when they do. But over the years, I've got to know what the NDAs, particular NDAs, will approve and not. And that system seems to work quite well. And it seems to me that we're making something that worked more complicated than it needs to be to resolve an issue that should never have been an issue in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I guess we're putting time toward it because we have gotten a lot of questions and we feel like we do need to provide more clarity, so we're attempting to do that. I'm sorry if it feels like belaboring it to you. I do appreciate that each NDA is having these conversations about the priorities, where you want to go. I do think it's helpful because it helps you communicate with the folks that are coming and asking you about it. And to your point, this is an area where potentially we can think about the for-profit piece a little bit more and see if we can be more helpful in how we state that in the policies. So.
Yeah, and just to be clear, also, the resolution that was written in 1998 had policies related to it.
Oh, yes,
I mean, I think the difference now is obviously we put a lot of, the neighborhoods have to work through some complicated issues at times when you're asked for funding requests. And sometimes you do have to interpret. And I think that's why I keep saying, when in doubt, just give me a call. I'd be glad to talk with you about it. And we can work through those sorts of things. Because no policy for any is ever going to be able to cover everything. There's always going to be some really strange request that we're going to get that we never thought about. And honestly, I think this might be the first time I can remember that we've had performances where there was a business charging for admission. But there was nothing that in our policy that says that you can't charge for admission either. You can, we do have neighborhoods like Llewellyn raises money at their concerts, but it's not a charge for, to actually come to watch the bands. So we'll definitely have to work through that a little bit.
But we would really like to talk about what you do
Yeah,
a lot less
gotcha.
about
Right on
what you
time.
don't do. So that is where this report, I'm excited about it. It's another one of my things that makes more work for Jason that I like. Sorry, Jason, but please do take a look at it. If it is feeling laborious or something that people won't engage with, let us know that. But I'm hoping this can be a brag book for you with your folks too, to kind of say if someone's new or they want to know, what do we do here? It's like, hey, we do this. We paint intersections. We have concerts. We, and we'd love to have you participate. So please do take a look at that. And then if there are ways moving into the future that we can communicate around the policies in a more helpful way, let us know that too.
So I did want to have some time to talk about what you guys like providing, letting us know what's been going on. So let's move to that if we can. We're going to start from the bottom because we always start with the A's. We'll start with the L's. So I think just for sake of time, if one person from each neighborhood could just let us know what you've been up to, especially any areas where like you think like the other neighborhoods might be able to partner with you, or if you have something coming up, exciting thing that you did, that sort of thing. So we'll start with Linwood.
Well, we, of course, had our park on the Carefree Sundays route, and so we had some misters and some supplies to decorate bikes with for that, and it's very popular. We've had a few problems with meetings and things like that, and things that we've planned because of losing our meeting place one weekend because the school wasn't open one day. The night custodian wasn't there, and then our Adopt a Road we had to cancel because of so many other city activities going on that Saturday. But we're really excited about the Linwood improvements and the Monroe Greenway happening in our neighborhood. It's really exciting. I've been to a couple of the meetings that they had, open houses, and really looking forward to this happening.
Excellent. Thank you. Llewellyn is next.
We put the map back up, that's just the neighborhoods will work.
Okay.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me do this. I can put it.
So I'll start here and then I'll go to the map and point out a couple things.
Oh, wait, that's in.
But, so I wrote down 4 things, started to write down 4 things. The first one is Llewellyn has a continuing problem with a meeting location. I've tried a number of different places over the last few years. Nothing's quite perfect. Lately we've been meeting at the community college. They've been very generous, but they sure are not very handy for people in our neighborhood, especially if they've got to walk to it. So that one is still open. Next topic I think might be a space at the museum, which I don't know if there's a room big enough there for us, but there might be. So we're working on that. Solstice event, we think this was the 21st that we've done. Not as big and busy as the previous 2 years. I think the weather report being much worse than the actual weather discouraged people. But those of us who continue to put long hours into it, and I always have to parenthetically add the Oaks family, the 4 of them, I don't think we could do it without them. So when their girls decide to go away to college, we're in real trouble, but they'll have to adopt a couple more. But at any rate, we still ended up in the black. We did end up giving a lot of hot dogs away to the Portland Rescue Mission, but that's fair enough, I guess. So to the map, and I guess I'll steal Kelly's microphone.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're in the Swiss cheese neighborhood. All those places that will eventually get annexed into the city. I keep telling people that. But part of this, Stanley Avenue goes right there, north and south from King to Johnson. Obviously, continues with a jog south of King Road also. But that's been one on the Greenway map for future development as a greenway. Not a good choice, and it's too busy. Cars move too fast because it's just a big straightaway. So anyway, just this last Saturday, a group of us walked on Hollywood Avenue and Wichita as alternatives. And we're going to be talking next Wednesday night at our meeting about proposing one of those to the city. There's no immediate funding anyway, so it's out there a ways, but I think it's important to get that discussion going. And then the last one I was going to bring up, one of my continuing projects, actually it would work better with Steve's project map, but Mullins Street, most of you don't even know there is a Mullins Street, but it stops and starts all the way across there, 1 block north of King. And it's, so not only are we the Swiss cheese neighborhood, we're also the dead-end street neighborhood, partly because of that. But at any rate, we continue to work on a plan for making Mullen a continuing street through there that my priority is not making it a full urban improvement when that happens. That's it for Llewellyn, unless Lisa wants to add anything.
Thank you. Lake Road.
I'm lucky I have my communication director here. And so I'm going to let her talk. I'm more a number person.
Come up to
You
the
gotta be
microphone.
about.
Microphone.
Yep, your mic.
All right, my name's Gwen. I'm the Communications and Development Coordinator for Lake Road Neighborhood. Let's see, we have been campaigning for a couple of years to get involved in concessions at Winter Solstice event. And this last December, we were able to participate. And it was very successful. We did popcorn concession. And the primary goal for that is to engage folks, let them know that we actually exist. And that's probably, I think, the main focus, too, for the work that we're doing over the next couple of years. And our goals is to use our savings account to more effect for engagement for the community. There's a subcommittee that's been developed for a intersection mural project. We're still identifying a site for that. There's a couple of them that are being discussed in the NDA right now. And we're hoping that we can complete that within a year. This summer, we're going to have our first summer social event, and that's a partnership with Milwaukee Floral and Garden, which is probably the one and only services business that we have in our NDA. But they were identified as a hub for the neighborhood a couple of years ago by the city. And Corey Lates has been really generous with space for meetings and very much open to having a community event at their place of business. And so that's going to involve a couple of food trucks and storytellers. And looping into that is our NDA has commissioned a special history project with a couple of Milwaukee high school students. And that's a focus on the watershed that we consider to be our border that we identify with, which is Kellogg Creek. And they're going to be producing a documentary. We're working with Northwest Documentary, which is an arts nonprofit in the area. A community member by the name of Mark Kazmarek is mentoring the students with editing and technical skills. And those students will be producing that film over the next couple of months. And then the documentary will be premiered at the Summer Social. And let's see, what else am I forgetting? We've got the Summer Social, we have the History Project documentary.
Are we still doing movie under the star?
Movie in the Park?
Uh-huh.
I believe so. We haven't seen a schedule with the Parks Department yet, but I believe we'll still continue to participate in that. We're creating a partnership for supporting the Milwaukee Presbyterian Church on Lake Road and their outdoor sanctuary on Kellogg Creek. And we're engaging the Milwaukee Grad Party as well as Round Middle School students to participate in invasives removal. And we're hoping that's a long-term project as well. That's about it.
That's a lot. It makes me think, make sure, folks, communicate with myself and Jordan, about your events and that sort of thing coming up so that we just know, we can use the website and all of our tools to try to help get the word out and make sure that we know to schedule the NDA trailer and all that kind of fun stuff too, because I'm already getting folks, contacting me about the NDA trailer for the summer. So just so you're not having conflicts with others, if you get on the schedule, then it's yours. So definitely. Thank you, Glenn. Island Station.
Yes. Everybody take a look at page 5, the photo on the bottom, the street painting.
Oh, I love that.
It was done about a year ago, and so if you want to see how the impact after a year of people driving over, and this is one of our quieter corners, you can go by now if you're at all interested in doing this, take a picture so you can see what it looks like after a year. Because what we're to the point now that we're going to have to refresh it. One of the difficulties, if you look at this photo, is the brown of the eagle is really hard to see now that it's gotten dark. So the blue on this photo, really easy to see all of that. So if you can use brighter colors instead of the dark, you'll end up with a design that'll last much longer. Elk Rock Island is an island again. And as Mark commented to the city of Portland when they were asking to transfer the ownership to the city of Milwaukee, it lets the island rest for about 4 or 5 months of the year. And this past year, we had a count on the weekend before 4th of July, and we had 300 visitors come through, 500 visitors come through in one day. So it gets busy over there. Kronberg Park, the bike ped path is open. Hopefully some of you made it to the celebration. I see people using it when I drive to work, swing around that corner. I noticed tonight there's a sign that says, please walk your bike, but I don't see people walking their bike. Most of them are still riding their bike, but at least they're using the path, and that's a good thing. One of the things that, toward the end, you'll see that we have a large fund in our bank. One of the things we do typically is to support the parks. We have 6 parks in our neighborhood. Milwaukee Bay Park, a portion of it is in the neighborhood. Kellogg Creek Park, which is actually a county park with Wes. Trolley Trail is a linear park, it's in our neighborhood. Kronberg Park with the bike path is in it. Spring Park and Elk Rock Island. And what we've done in the past is take like a $10,000 grant and take it to the NCPRD and say, where can we use this? And they can take $10,000 grant from the neighborhood and leverage off of that and get a lot of other grants and get a lot of other entities involved and excited about because they see the local activity going on and the support from the local neighborhood. And if you're interested in walking through all of those parks, if you go to the Milwaukee Museum and look up Lots Loop, there's a guided walk that takes you through all the parks, starts downtown, goes along the river, has history, types of boats you'll see on the river, nature. You'll learn that Elk Rock Island is the tip of an extinct volcano that was under several miles of ocean at one time when the ocean went clear over to the Cascade Mountains. And so it's a really nice little loop and really good if you have neighbors come to visit and you want something to do in the afternoon. You don't have to do the entire trip. It goes up and over and down to Trolley Trail and then back into town. And now we're at the point where we need to reconsider the last part of it because the trail is open, so we can now take the visitors through Kronberg Park and then into downtown instead of the way we were doing it before up to, Washington Street and take a right and then have to cross over 99, which can be rather dangerous. And so they were talking about earlier about the lights at intersections. We would still love to see some lights at the intersections on Highway 99 in downtown. One of the concerns we get from our neighbors is being almost hit there. And in fact, we usually carry an umbrella so we can whack the car if it comes too close. It's really a problem.
Which ones?
All three.
99 and
Just,
Harrison.
okay, just the three right there.
And they did improve it because they allow the people to start walking about 10 seconds before the light goes green for the cars to make the corner. So at least you're out in the intersection so they have a better chance to see you. So
Yeah.
that was a big improvement.
Okay, yeah, I haven't, let me check. I haven't heard of any lighting projects, but 99E is identified as one of the corridors getting investment through the Metro Transportation Measure they're talking about for 2020. So, yeah, let me see.
If that's the case, I'd like to throw out just a dedicated walk signal.
Yeah.
No cars, just walk, even those crisscross kind.
Yeah.
You know, that gets you from here to here to here, only
Yeah.
for peds, and then the cars go.
After that.
Yeah, well, wish recorded. I don't know,
that's right.
yeah, I don't know when anything's gonna happen there, but it's just important to know, about.
Just want to keep in front of you.
And then the walking your bikes, just so you know. So at the top, we do need people to ideally dismount and go, it's kind of a tight turn right there at the top of Kronberg when you're coming off 99. If you're coming
Yes.
northbound on 99, but you should be able to ride your bike on the path itself. So I think we have some signage updates that we need to do to clarify what can be done where. So thanks for flagging it, but
Well,
it's
instead
mainly
of-
about, it's right at that turn where we don't want people crashing into people, so.
If you take a look at the corner where this painting is, and in fact, you can see it on here, bicyclists, this is a multi-use path, please yield to pedestrians.
Yeah.
That would be really helpful on the bridge, to make them recognize that there's pedestrians walking on it also. It's not just a bike path,
Okay, thank you.
Bike freeway.
a bike freeway.
Thank you, Milo.
Yep.
Historic Milwaukee.
Historic Milwaukee. So just briefly, we spent a few months moving our meeting place around. We went to the Chapel Theater, to the museum, to Decibels, and then this month to the library, to the new community room. I would say they probably got some new people to attend maybe, but I think some people maybe that aren't used to venturing out as much probably didn't come, so I don't have any recommendations or whatever, but we sure enjoyed it, that's for sure. The main thing I guess I was gonna talk about tonight, besides Kronberg, we love to do any
Do a swap.
work parties and cleanups and planting.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, so it's really cool, I really enjoy that, and I thought the city did a really great job with the opening of it. I enjoyed that day, as well as the one at the library, by the way, it's really good. So, actually Wednesday, a small group are meeting. We want to reach out to new residents that move into the neighborhood. And, you know, I kind of have an idea, but I'm leaving that open for the committee to decide, but that would really play into the outreach that you're talking about. I would like, as far as the people my neighbors, I'd like to be able to, when someone moves in, just go down, knock on their door, introduce myself, and leave something with them. Maybe they would say something about the neighborhood, maybe something about some of the nonprofits, something about the library, something about the city. How that would work in apartments, I'm not exactly sure. We did when Northwest Housing opened, I just went around to the library and got some things from Jason and gave them to their housing person, and they distributed it to the new residents. But we'd like to do a little bit better than that, so that's ongoing. And if we come up with something that could, we could just like, instead of printing Historic Milwaukee, maybe your neighborhood or something, we might be looking for some help.
Yeah.
See how that goes.
We're just talking about the same
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
All right.
A welcome packet.
Welcome
Yeah.
wagons.
Yeah.
So, Ray, did you use a postcard or did you use a flyer, a sheet flyer?
I was thinking, actually, I don't want to direct it, I want the committee to come up with it, but I was thinking of just like kind of a folder type thing. I mean, we have one in our kitchen, it's in the kitchen drawer on the top, and it has all the coupons in it. So, because, but I know a lot of people do things on their phone and stuff like that, that's all good, but something that people would hang on to, and be useful.
Yeah, just to mention, I know a lot of the neighborhoods talk about having like your own flyer We have our general flyer,
Right.
you've probably seen it, that Jordan created, with has a heart on it and the map on the back and all the neighborhoods listed and when you meet, and just a general idea like, hey, the neighborhoods meet to do amazing stuff and you should get involved. But we could potentially take that and sort of transform that into a more specific, flyer for each neighborhood. I think our challenge is like trying to maintain 7 flyers. If we did 7 flyers
Right.
over time, people change, meeting places change. So
They do.
so I'm not saying we can't do that. It's just we'll have to just think more about how to do that in a way that we're not constantly creating something that's immediately like outdated, which we can run into sometimes. So, but we'd be glad to work with you to create material like that.
So if we have the ideas, we're asking our members right now, how,
Yeah.
of the idea what to create. So when we create something, can we go to you guys to have you proofread it, help us out, design it, and then print it out?
Yeah, we can work, we do some of our design in-house. Jordan is a pretty good designer. I'm not so great at it, to be honest, just not my forte.
Anything is better than ours.
We have a graphic designer we can work with, so we can definitely find ways to make material. We just have to make sure that it's not, if every neighborhood called me tomorrow and said we need 7 different flyers, that would just be a little bit more challenging. But yeah, let us know what you're thinking of, and maybe there's a way to, as we start talking about material for each neighborhood more, that we can
Right.
come up with something that works for everybody, that's consistent across all the neighborhoods, that everybody's happy with. Maybe there's something like that we can do too.
Okay.
So,
All right, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Ray, is that?
That's
Thank
all.
you. Thanks. Hector Campbell.
We don't do anything, no. We've been involved a lot with the, what we're calling Menthorne Commons, as opposed to Monroe Apartments, because we don't like that name. And it's, kind of ties into the Menthorne Creek and Menthorne wetlands. Homewood Park, we had a nice turnout for the Ivy polling, which we use the grad party kids come up. That's part of in order to get the money from us, they got to come and work in the park. And they do, and they bring their parents with them, and they work in the park. We got a lot of ivy pulled out of there and a lot of plants planted, so we do it every late winter, and I think it really helps out the park a lot. We've been off and on with meetings and discussions about the repaving of Home Avenue and Wood Avenue that seems like, again, got pushed back another year or so. Kind of seems like the way it goes. So be careful, we have inverted speed humps, and we have regular speed humps on Home Avenue. If you don't know what an inverted speed hump is, it's a pothole.
Oh,
So,
nice.
They're really nice potholes, too. So that, that and, the Monroe Greenway project, the approved route is through one of our streets, and what else have we been up to? The picnic, the annual picnic we do, which keeps getting bigger every year. And the community garden's still going strong. So we've been busy.
Excellent. Thank you.
While I'm here, it's not an NDA thing as such. April the 25th, which is Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the CERT team and the Public Safety Foundation and the cadets will be doing the DEA drug turn-in, and we'll have the shredding truck here as well. We didn't fill the shredding truck last year. It was here for the full 4 hours, but it's free, and
Date and time again.
April 25th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
I actually added that to the city calendar on Friday, I believe.
I couldn't remember whether I'd sent anything out yet or not.
Well, someone called me, and then I called the police department, and they told me, so, yeah.
Well, I'd like to add that the Milwaukee Environmental Stewards are trying to add the styrofoam pickup or
No,
drop-off
no.
to the same,
No, they're not.
oh, that's not anymore?
No, no. No, it's been,
Never mind.
it's been cancelled. We offered
Oh,
them,
cancelled.
but they've got some problems with disposal, so it's been cancelled.
okay.
Yeah.
No, I think just
Yeah.
joining it with the.
So what aspect of that got canceled? Because we
The
had it
historic
started,
fund.
The stuff?
like the whole program?
No.
No,
no,
just
no.
the
Just the- with
pickup.
April 25.
We were gonna, Greg and
Special
Michelle,
pickup.
Oh,
Emma were
okay.
gonna come down and
Do a special pickup.
Okay.
pick up on that Saturday.
But
they
the drop
can't-
off in general is
Yeah,
still. okay,
At
okay.
Exceed Enterprises over there by Bob's Red Mill, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to send that in the Friday update this week. Yeah. It is in the pilot. Okay, it's in the pilot.
I'm not saying you shouldn't, but.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
One last thing. Last year, Island Station was the home to the historic home tour event from the museum. It was really well received, and I know that they're looking for a neighborhood with some homes. We had 4 homes, and they had history of the home and history of the neighborhood and history of the area. It was really a nice event, and so if you're interested in that, get a hold of the museum folks.
And that could be, historic doesn't need to be the oldest house. It could be, mid-century is considered a historic house at this point, so.
Actually, it's pre-1970s now.
Right.
Yeah.
So think broad.
My house fits.
Yes, you are.
Sad but true.
We're a little over, but we have Arden Wald. Arden Wald.
Take it away, you're more positive than I am.
I'll be fast. Our friends of Tiedemann Johnson was just this Saturday, and we pulled weeds. Actually, I wasn't there, I was sick. But our group pulled weeds and made everything ready for next month, which is Johnson Creek Watershed-wide event, and Tiedemann Johnson is part of that. So first Saturday in March. We'll be planting plants and removing trash and getting lots of people out for that event. And our neighborhood doesn't have we don't raise money for our neighborhood, but we do a fundraiser for our neighborhood park. And so that has already started also with fundraising. We do a neighborhood plant sale in May, every year, the weekend after Mom's Day weekend. So that started already. I think that's it.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? We're adjourned.
Thanks, Kelly.